morning, good afternoon and good evening. I'm Saskia, aka Sassy Colouring, and I'm here with you today to do another how to draw video. The image you can see on your screen at the moment is a video that we did about drawing simple flowers, and what we're going to do today is take a few supplies, our Fineliners, our pencil, some kind of eraser, and we're going to level it up. The first thing we want to do is make sure that we've got everything that we need, that our pencil is nice and sharp, and that we have an idea of what we're going to do today. When I say let's level it up, I don't want to use the word let's get more advanced. What we're going to do is take the drawing that we did last time, tweak it a little bit, and turn it into something that might be a bit more interesting to look at. We are going to explore the same kind of design, but what we're going to do is maybe make it less cartoony and more illustration. Let's start off the exact same way that we did last time. I used a circle from an old CD because it's all scratched and can't be used anymore, so I use this as kind of my base circle. I draw around the circle in the middle just so I can see where the middle is. And then very roughly we're going to map out where we want the flowers to go. We're going to use the same amount of flowers as we did last time, 3 on each kind of angle of the circle, and we're going to overlap them just a little bit more than we did last time. One thing I am going to tell you right off the bat is that I'm using slightly different paper because I'm having to order my paper from different sources. So I don't know exactly how well this paper is going to take to 1, my Fineliners, and 2, my alcohol markers when I get to colour it. But we can cross that bridge when we come to it. We're going back to our flowers, and the same way that we did last time, we're going to put a circle in the centre of each bigger circle. What we're going to do this time though is try and give them a bit more of a direction. So rather than have a circle like we have in the, say we'll use version 1, on version 2 we're going to use more of an oval shape moving in the direction that we want it facing in. So the first one we're going to have a circle. If you're going to the left, we're going to oval it, and to the right an oval. Now the two ovals do look exactly the same, it's just the way that we're going to place the petals around them that's going to give the flowers their directionality, let's use that word. So center flower has a nice round circle in the middle, the 2 outer flowers will face away from that center flower. So we're going to divide our flower up exactly the same as we did last time. We're going to use 5 straight lines, and each section that we're cutting into is going to have 1 petal in the section. If you want to get a bit more advanced, you can always section them up with slightly more. So one flower might have 5, one might have 6, even more, whatever you want. But what we're going to do is just stick to the 5 because we don't want to get too fancy, but we are going to change up the shape of the petals. So on version 1, we did every petal the same, and it was just kind of that loop action. With this version, we're going to kind of distort the outer edges, give them a bit more movement. Again, it's still going to look cartoony, but it's going to be a lot more interesting to look at, and if you make each petal different, then it's given the flower a more natural look. We're still using the segments in the same way that we did the first one, so we still have a nice guide to work to, but what you do inside that segment is going to be different each time, and it really does make a huge difference to how your flower is going to look. Now rather than leave our flower just like this, what we can do is use a few lines here and there to make the flower again a little bit more 3D. So anywhere I've got this kind of, let's say a mountain and a valley, on the edge of the petal comes up and it goes down. Anywhere there's a valley, I pull a line down in towards the center. And then from the circle in the center, 2 or 3 flicks going towards the outside. Also, where we flicked from the outside, rather than leave the center perfectly circle, I'm kind of rounding off the petals on the inner edges. And this is going to make it look more, again, interesting to look at and a lot less cartoony. So exactly the same again with the other flowers on the outer edges. The difference you're going to find here are the petals closer to the center are going to be bigger, and because of the way we've positioned the inner circle, the petals that face the outside of the cluster, so on the flower that I'm doing now, the very right hand petal is going to be a lot smaller, because if you imagine that the flower is facing away from you, you're going to lose vision on some of the petals. So you can draw them the same, but I wouldn't pull those lines in as far. And as you progress with your drawing and kind of start exploring your own style more, you can look into kind of rounding off the edges rather than making them look like the outer edge of a petal. Make it look as if the petal is bent over. So it would just be kind of a smooth line. One more and then I'll go into a slightly sped up version. So exactly the same. We have our 5 segments. Each segment you're going to take as an individual petal, and you're going to try and get them to look, they're going to be uniform because they're roughly the same size, but use the outer edge of the petal to kind of create a different look on each one. Remembering that in nature, every single petal, no matter how similar a rose will look to another rose, every single petal is like a fingerprint. It's unique and so different in its own way. I think we're already starting to see how different the two styles are between the super cartoony style and this slightly more realistic, but still very cartoony. It's still not a realistic drawing, but it is something that can really make the difference in your journals, or if you're adding an element to a colouring page to kind of give it a more, we'll say, grown-up look, for want of a better word, that the kind of the detail makes it look a bit more sophisticated. So we're adding in our leaves, and before we did have the rectangle shape, and we kind of used that as a guide. I'm going to assume if you're moved up with the video, then you're kind of used to drawing that shape. And the same rule is going to apply here. We're going to use the very base shape, but along the outer edges, we're going to give a bit more movement, and therefore it'll look more like what you would see on a natural leaf than a very cartoony style leaf. So I know I always work best when I am able to visually see something that I'm trying to learn. I find it really hard to kind of describe the process that I'm going through and put it into words. So I really hope that between either watching or listening, I'm going to say more watching than listening, that you're kind of getting a nice idea of what I'm doing and how easy it is to transform something so simple like the first drawing that we did. And again, when I say simple, I know it does take time to kind of get your muscle memory used to drawing things, and so what some people might find simple, some people find super hard. But what I'm saying is the kind of basic style of drawing and cartoony style of drawing, how easy it can be transformed with just a little bit of work into something that looks, we're going to use this word sophisticated again, a lot more sophisticated, and something that if you put it into your journal, you can feel really, really proud of. So I still added those small circles because I really do think that they are really nice kind of space fillers. And if you were going to put this anywhere, doodle it somewhere, it really does kind of fill in a bit of space and take out, make your drawing look a bit more beefed up, I'm going to say. So another thing I want you to be aware of is the fact that I'm using a pencil that is very, very dark and very, very heavy. And I'm sure I said this in the last video. If I were going to be drawing this for myself on something, the lines would be so much lighter, so that when I do go to erase it, you can hardly see anything left. Whereas to let you see what I'm doing, I have to press quite firm and leave really dark lines, which means that when I go to erase it, it's so much harder. And you can be left with what I call ghost lines, because you'll see the remnants of where the pencil graphite lines were. A tip for you is that if you are very, very heavy-handed like I am, I naturally press really hard. So what you do is you move your hand from where I have it now down really close to the point, move it further back towards the back of the barrel, and it does help to kind of relieve the pressure on the pencil. So even if you're quite heavy-handed, the further back you're going to hold a pencil, the lighter the pencil is going to be on the paper. I hope that makes sense. Another thing I'm going to talk to you about is the way that you erase whatever pencil lines you've left. So I have this Derwent putty rubber, and I got it in a scroller box, subscription box, that I think was maybe 2 or 3 months ago. I'm trying to get to like it, but I honestly, I need a new putty rubber, and because all our art shops are closed and because of Brexit there's a lot of stuff that won't be delivered to Ireland, I can't get any. The Derwent one I do not like. I don't think it's very good quality. I don't get on very well with it. I don't think it needs the same as the others do. Some people love them, I personally don't. So when I do try to erase things, I just don't think it does a good enough job. If you know Derwent as a brand, you'll know that they're generally a really good quality, high quality brand. So I'm really surprised by the fact that I don't like the putty rubber. But it just goes to show that brand doesn't always matter. I think my favourite one was a Faber-Castell one, and that's the one I'm trying to get again. But I would even take kind of the really cheap 70-cent eraser over this putty rubber at this moment, because I really dislike it. Okay, so enough waffle, back to our drawing. All I'm doing is adding in a few small lines to the leaves, tiny little flicks that are going to give it a bit more depth and a bit more to the illustration, just something else for you to look at. So when you're finished all your little bits and pieces, don't forget that it's just as easy to add in more later. That's when you want to come in with your eraser, or this is where putty rubber is really, really good, because you can kind of just rub it over or roll it over your drawing, and what it's going to do is take off that huge layer of graphite, leaving you where you can see what you've drawn, but it's not so dark that it's going to interfere with your line drawing. Now, one of my biggest bugbears with this putty eraser is that as you take off the layer of graphite, it seems to kind of lift it from one part of the page and deposit it on another. So you're rubbing one area out but pushing the graphite to a different area. So I ended up having smudges all around the illustration, which I've never had happen to me before with any other putty rubber. But onwards and upwards. Our Fineliners, I'm going to use a 0.4. I will leave you a link to the brand that I'm using, but these were a super cheap set that I got. This is a 0.2. They were from Amazon and they aren't branded. Well, they have a brand, it's just I can't read it because it's in Chinese. But there was 10 of them in a set, from this one, which was the 0.05, all the way up to, I think it was a 1.2, and they're fabulous. They work really, really well, and I buy them time and time again. So another way to bring your illustration to life is to use different marker. So another way to make your illustration come to life is to use different line thicknesses. It's the same as if you're having a conversation with somebody. If their voice is very monotone and one line, it can get a bit boring, and your drawings are the same. If they're all the same thickness, well, as much as they can be when you're hand drawing, if they're all the same thickness, then it can look very hard to distinguish kind of the flowers between the leaves, and the details all look the same and it all gets kind of mushed into one. Whereas if you're using different line thicknesses, then it's quite easy to see where the out edge of the flower is and the highlights and the small lines, and you can see detail better because your eye is drawn to different parts of the flower. When I'm inking a drawing, what I like to try and keep in mind is that the more angled your pen is, the more chance there is that you're going to draw a jittered line or a scratched line. So I try to keep the pen as much at a 90-degree angle upright as I can, so you've got less chance of so again, because I'm heavy-handed, I do push the nibs in down through the pen quite quickly, so you've got metal and then nib. When I draw more slanted, then you've got a chance that the metal will catch the paper rather than full nib, and then you won't get ink in that area, so you have to go over your lines once or twice. And that's where I feel I start making mistakes, because when I go over the same line, I might take a different path with the pen, and so then I've got double lines and it starts getting messy. So it's just the way that I draw when I'm using Fineliners. And again, I've gotten very lazy from using digital drawing, because that doesn't happen when you're drawing digitally. Yeah. So I have to keep reminding myself to kind of turn my pen upright so that I'm getting better lines when I'm lining the illustration. So we're going to watch the rest of the outline in speed ×4, just so that we can keep the video a little bit shorter, and then I will show you the last few steps before colouring. Okay, the outline is done. There are one or two small little things I want to add just to kind of complete it. As we did last time, I wanted to just finish off the circle. So I'm just going to add a few smaller circles to finish off the whole illustration. There is a lot more to this illustration. If you look at the other one, we had plenty of room to add in kind of vines and leaves, but this one it's kind of beefed out a bit. So we're going to leave it to dry for a couple of seconds just so that we don't smudge the ink, and then you can go back in and make sure you get rid of all the pencil marks that are left. I wasn't able to get rid of all of my, like I said, ghost lines because of pressing so hard in the beginning, and because I am going to say an element of the fact that this putty rubber is just not very good. What I would say is that if you've made any of these mistakes where either you've pressed too hard and you just can't get rid of the lines, don't worry too much, because the more you kind of fight with the lines, the more chance there is that you'll tear your paper. And the lines definitely are easier to cover up by colouring over than trying to kind of repair a tear in your paper. I'm going to speed up the colouring section now, but if you are interested, I'm using Copic Chow markers. If you are going to use any kind of marker over your line drawing, what you want to do is on a test sheet of paper, Draw something very simple, leave it for a while, and then use the markers to see, does it kind of bleed into the ink? Does it make the ink smear or smudge? Just so that you don't spend so much time doing this beautiful illustration, and then when you come in to beautify it with the colours, end up doing damage or ruining it. It's just something that you can be aware of if you're going to be colouring directly into kind of a journal. So if I made a mistake on this sheet of paper, it's not going to be the be all and end all, is it? But if you have got a journal that you use every day and you're trying to beautify it with these simple illustrations and you ruin one, then it can be a bit disappointing. So that is it. That is our level up illustration finished. So you can definitely see the difference between the first illustration and this one, but the similarities in how we got from illustration 1 to illustration 2. A few tweaks here and there and you've got two completely different illustrations. I really hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope it's been of some use to you. If it has, please consider giving it a like, clicking the subscription button if you haven't already. Click that notification bell so that you get notified when I upload new videos. Until next time, stay safe and as always, stay sassy.